Imagine if your recruiting pipeline were not the problem. And imagine if there were tools and systems inside of your organization today that would help you increase the diversity of your workforce. Finally, imagine if there was someone who could tell you how you've been doing it wrong this whole time. Well, I'm here to tell you that you no longer have to imagine, because all of those things are true. Studies have told us for years that organizations that focus on a diverse workforce will outperform the other companies in their industry. In fact, a recent McKinsey study said that those organizations will have an improved financial performance of 35% above their peers. And in organizations that focus on leadership inside of their organizations that are diverse will have an increase in their revenue by over 19%. So those numbers shouldn't really come of any surprise to any of us. For years, we have known at our organization that companies that focus on having diverse teams have greater innovation, and they can produce better products and better services out to the marketplace. So it stands to reason that their financial performance would be improved. So how do we define diversity? Diversity to us at Diversify Thinking is more than just a particular characteristic or where we come from. But diversity is, how do we think about increasing the diversity of thought across our teams? That diversity of thought comes from so many arenas. It comes from the experiences we've had in our lifetime. It comes in the industries we've worked in. It does come from the culture that we come from. It does also come from our background and all of those experiences. And we at Diversify Thinking help companies focus on how do they increase that diversity of thought to get to that greater point of innovation. We recently were talking to an organization specifically around that and looking at their recruiting process, and they are actually increasing the diversity of their company significantly by thinking outside the box and doing things in a different way. So as the recruiting manager is locating recruits to come in and talk to the organization, they are making sure that they have the core competencies needed for the role. But once that individual comes in for an interview, the company is no longer sharing resumes with those individuals across the table from them doing the interview. So instead of looking at specific characteristics we might sometimes see as we're looking at recruits, such as where they went to school, maybe the major that they had, maybe where they grew up or what city they come from, now they just ask questions that are based in competencies. And so the recruit only has to speak to what experiences have they had in the past and what has that resulted in terms of what they've given to the organizations they've been part of. And so they're increasing their diversity by focusing again on those core competencies and what can that individual bring as far as diversity of thought to that team. So I know you're gonna say, well, Candice, we know that this is a problem and we're fixing it already. We have programs inside of our company to address, the lack of diversity and what we need to be doing. But what I want to share with you is 3 ways that we see organizations missing really the idea and really having gaps. One of those being how we define diversity, as I just spoke to. The second one is having a focus on teams and not just the individual. Diversity is more than just a metric that we need to check off. We really need to have a way to assess the teams that we have and look at what gaps exist in those teams as far as the experiences they've had, as far as the characteristics that they do have, and as far as the competencies that they possess. And looking at it with a focus on building better teams will lead us to better problem solving. For the last 15 years, we've helped organizations complete complex projects. And in doing that, I can say firsthand that I've seen the organizations that have diverse teams and members that are coming from all different ways of thinking definitely can solve problems more effectively and have stronger solutions. Lastly, the most critical gap that we see is around the lack of strategic thinking and the planning process that comes with that we're seeing organizations use as it relates to solving this problem of diversity. We need to make sure that we're putting in time and financial investments the same way to solve the lack of diversity in our companies as we do to solve other business processes. So that's the key place where we come in at Diversify Thinking and play a role with our core companies, is to help them put those systems and those processes in place to make sure they have a holistic program and that we're not focused on one-off trainings on implicit bias, for example, or resource groups that have a lack of funding. We come in and we help those organizations customize and create a program that allows for continuous improvement, as well as tracking their metrics and making sure that they really have those key performance indicators to show that they're making successful moves towards change.